Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second session of week 2. In this session, as I discussed when we met on Tuesday, which is yesterday. Yep. No, Monday. We had this class Monday. I have teach 2 classes, so I keep getting confused. But as we talked about Monday, today is basically just going to be the resume critique and feedback. I could put that in the grades, but I think that doing a live critique where you are able to see all of the different examples and I can show you other examples will help you be more effective in the way that you are making revisions than if I just make notes on things. So I'm also going to make notes on the PDFs and send them back to you for a little bit of a reminder. But remember that what you see here is really going to help you make the best of your resume. So first of all, just a little reminder of assessment 1B. This is what we're critiquing today. You were asked in the prompt to include your CSS 299 and your DES250 personal logo. I saw some of you submit that, but not all of you, so could be a little bit of a point deduction there. It needs to be created in InDesign, and remember that it's going to show off your layout skills and your typography skills and choices as that is. So I talked a little bit about this in week 1. So if you didn't watch the second session in week 1, then I recommend that you do that again, because I went over in detail some of the things that you need to think about as far as the content goes in your resume, including not having an objective, just rather an introduction or a personal statement, the kinds of things that you can list that are relevant, and the things that you shouldn't include. I also talked about the list of, provided the list of, list of courses that you have taken so far so that you can use those and list those as design skills. So some of that I think, you can redo if you didn't do that. So be sure to watch that lecture recording as well. So this session right here with the critique and feedback is going to be very important, because your assessment 2B is to make these revisions and changes and then add a cover letter and for a specific job. So what you would want to do is make the revisions and changes on your resume first, and then take part of the branding that you have on your resume and then add the information on the cover letter from there. And depending on the layout of your design, that can sometimes need a little bit of modifications to go with, or some of you, depending on how you have laid it out, can easily just remove some of the content and put in the cover letter there. Some things to think about that I think, and I'm going to be pretty harsh when it comes to your resume critiques. I hope everybody won't mind, but I would rather that you hear it now than that you lose out on a job. If you want to be hired, your resume has to look great. It is their impression of your design skills. So if your resume has problems with the design, inconsistencies in the type, any kind of issues that I'm going to kind of point out to you, then you might not even get a chance to show your portfolio, okay? So that's how important it is. I do not know how many people I have just put aside, not even called back, not even considered for a position just because their resume was not well designed. So this is definitely, even though the listing, some of the stuff might have looked great on there, that might have put that they had a high GPA and they were on the honors list and all kinds of stuff like that, that they had previous experience, whatever. If their resume is not well designed, then I don't believe it. I don't believe any of their design skills. And if they can't, use some creativity and use basic design principles and things like that, and layout skills for a resume, then I'm not very confident that they're going to be able to do any of the work that I need them to do. So it is super, super important. Make these revisions now. I have listed a lot of resources in the announcements that you can go through. I have a couple of other links right here too that talk about some well-designed resume examples, and some of them I have my reservations about as well. We can take a look at those after, but some of this I also mentioned in last week's lecture. All right, so let's take a look at the resumes that have been turned in so far, and let me give you some feedback on that and show you some other examples that can guide you. Now, usually I do anonymous critiques, but at this point in your career and in a portfolio class, that's not going to be possible because your resume has your name on it, right? And plus, it's kind of time for you to be able to handle a personal critique as well. So with that being said, there is good parts and pieces of all of the different resumes, even though there's probably problems on all of them as well. So don't feel like you're being specifically singled out or anything like that. I think all of them can use some improvement, and you'll probably see that in your grades as well. Some more than others, and some improvements might be quick and easy to do and not very difficult, and others you kind of have to rethink your project. Okay, so let me go here and let me share. Right here. Okay, so we're going to start. Well, let's see. I'm wondering, I'm going to do this. I think sometimes this helps to have two side by side. Not necessarily because I want to compare them and say that one is good and one is bad, but and these are just put in here randomly, actually. So, but this kind of helps us, look at, oh, these are some strengths, these are some issues, these are some things, whatever. So, so I'm going to do them side by side, but again, I don't have one good, one bad, or anything like that. We're just going to take a look at things together. Okay. So both of these resumes are laid out with a grid, which is great. So you've used columns, right? This one has a 3-column grid. You can see really clearly. This grid right here is not as clear. It is almost a 2-column grid, but not quite. This column is a little wider than this one. So it doesn't have kind of as consistent of a grid, okay? And so starting with the one on the left, I'm just going to kind of mark and highlight a few, let's do this, a few concerns that I see. So one of them is that alignment. It's too close to being one or the, either you want to have an exact 2-column grid or an exact 3-column grid. One of the benefits with the 3-column grid, and this is actually a good example of that, I would say this one over here on the right, is that this is easy to transfer into a cover letter, or like have as a master page in InDesign that you can put in all kinds of other things in. Because since you have the photo, the personal information, the links to the social stuff, and expertise, whether you want to have that here or when you have that over here is fine. But at least the personal info and the links to the social media and so forth, if you have all of that in this column, then you can just take out, you would probably want to keep this header, but you could take out all of this other information right here, and you can just write your cover letter there, and then you have a very consistent look throughout, okay? So one of the things that we see here that I think would be nice over here too is to kind of have alignment going horizontally as well, because this one has kind of a horizontal header, which helps. If this image and this header were aligned across the board here, then you would kind of have that same field there. Okay, so some other things when we're talking about alignment, think, you know, we have some, this one right here, I think is looking like it almost has a right alignment here, but this one, okay, now I'm actually going to go through one at a time so we don't get too confused. Let's start now one at a time, okay? So alignment issues. You have center alignment right here, and then you have a right alignment right here, this heading right here that's kind of really big and bold. And the professional experience, none of this is design related, okay? So I wouldn't use any of this in here, especially things that, you know, it's just a year here and like not even a year here. That's not necessarily things that you want to put on your resume for a design job. It would be you would use the space much better by listing some of the classes that you have, which you have right here. Okay, but it's in between, you have things like cleaning and customer service, all kind of mixed in with the graphic design skills. So you want to take those out, okay? You don't want to mix things up. You want to be consistent with your design skills and just keep it to the design skills. So let's take some of these out, okay? Cash handling, that doesn't have anything to do with your design skills. And I would just put design skills instead here of the skill highlights, and just take, you know, in this section right here, don't have any of this content. Instead, list some of your Adobe skills. They are not here, they're missing. I don't think you need to call it professional summary. This can just be your little introduction right here. If you want to put on a roll, you can put that there. But again, that's not going to be impressive unless the design of your resume is impressive. I would capitalize the associate's degree right here. And you want to put the year that you're graduating right there as well. And for contact information, you know, there's some like little additional things in here that are just kind of getting in the way. Make sure that you capitalize things correctly. I wouldn't put the state and zip code on the same line as your phone number. Have that on a separate line. And then look at your alignment. So there's some different ways that people align things when they have things in columns. Either you would, you know, just do a straight left alignment on both of them so they're easier to see. Or sometimes if you have this two-column type arrangement, you can left align over here and right align over here. You can see some, I think we have some examples of that I can show you. And then I would be careful with this logo right here. Your monogram, I've posted in the announcements some tips and demos for creating a monogram, and I would go through those. This font right here looks like a chalkboard. It looks like it's kindergarten, you know, not very professional, not really something I would use as a monogram. And a monogram, usually you wouldn't have your dots in there either. You would just deal with the two initials of your name. I think you've chosen, you know, kind of a good font combination here, so that's all right. And I like the white standing out on the darker background. That's also a good point right here. But as far as just the content of your resume and the alignment and the dispersion on the page, I think you really need to rework that. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this is the one that we saw before. And I think this one has a lot of potential. Again, this Safino font right here is one of those that's just been overused by secretaries and non-professional all over the world and the country. So I would look into Adobe fonts and see if you can find something that is a little bit more unique. And then make sure that, you know, when you're aligning things, perfect alignment is important. So this one right here does not align with the rest of the stuff that's in this column. So making sure that that is aligning perfectly. Otherwise, I think you have good hierarchy in your little subheadings. Just some of the things that we talked about last week too is if when you have a background color, that could interfere with printing. So this white text here, the contrast isn't really that heavy. So I think that that could maybe be some problems if somebody is printing things out. But otherwise, I think, you know, it's definitely on the right track here. Okay, so let's continue. Now this one right here has some cool techniques in it, and I can see that you kind of been doing some research and been influenced by some of the trend that's out there. But you also want to be careful not to over design and not to make your things too busy. I think that there's a few things that you can do here to keep this style of design, but just simplify it a little bit. One of them would be to maybe take out some of this line work that's in here. You have, you know, these kind of different graphics and little pointers and things like that that I think add a kind of like a neat graphic touch. But then over here we have like a double line here. You have underlining and bolding and larger for all of the these subheadings right here. That's kind of a little bit of an overkill, right? It's enough that you just have it bolder and larger. There's also like a little border around these boxes that I would take out. Just simplify it, like right here where you have no line work and just clean and simple areas for the text. I think that you'll see that all of a sudden it will just kind of clean up and feel a little bit not quite as busy. One thing that you would see probably in a lot of examples are these little dots here, or any kind of scale that measures your different types of skills. Now, that was a trend a little while ago, and everybody was doing it, and everybody thought it was really cool. So you're going to see it on a lot of resume examples from at least a few years ago. I think in the industry there are some mixed feelings about this. Some people jumped on the bandwagon right away, thought it was cool, it was a new trend, so they wanted to do it. And, you know, just kind of that whole infographic influence on your resume so that you can kind of get a little idea of what your strengths and things like that are. But also, it's all relevant, right? Because this is compared to you and not to compare to other people. So it can be a little bit misleading. You also want to make sure that you can kind of deliver what you're showing, right? So if you're showing that you have really great InDesign and Illustrator skills, if you're given a project that you have to do in Illustrator or InDesign, they're going to count on you being able to do that. And what they expect as expertise skills might not be what you think is expertise skills. So it could be a little difficult and misleading. Plus, some people also claim, and I'm kind of probably of that school of thought, that you don't necessarily want to advertise the skills that you're not very strong in. Because if you're a new designer and you're jumping onto a job, you know, I hope that you are willing to learn. And so you don't want somebody to be dissuaded to hire you because they say, oh, his Photoshop skills are not that strong. Rather, if you're just listing Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, Animate, then they know that you have experience with all of those Adobe applications. And even if Photoshop is not your strongest skill, you will probably ramp up those skills if you get a project for that, right? You're going to apply yourself, learn some things, make sure that you can get the thing done. And so I would actually recommend not using these skill sliders or scales, especially right out of school, and then just list the Adobe suites that you have been trained in as your technical skills. And then, you know, you can active skills, design skills, you know, a list like this I think is good to have, you know, those kind of specific skills that you can put in here from your different courses. So other than that, I think the content is good here. A little about me section is better than having that what do we call it before? Yeah, what was it called before that I said you shouldn't have anymore? I'm forgetting it. The objective, that's right. So no objective. It's much better to have that about me section or introduction or something like that. And then I would also just like keep your colors consistent and contained. You have the gray and the green right here, kind of as your branded colors, but then in your little monogram right here, you have two other different colors of green. So just choose if you're going to have green. If this is your green branded color, then use it on your resume. And if this one is, then use it. Again, this one here, I think has that potential about just taking out this information and then putting your cover letter in there, because you have your Behance and your contact information and all of that stuff here on the side. You might not want to have the About Me section if you're doing a cover letter, though. All right, so here we have another one that I think has some potential. It's a little bit simplified and the text is very large. And for just your information text, you probably don't want to go over 12 point because then it's almost just kind of like you made it bigger just to fill it out. So I think that, you know, again, maybe doing a right alignment here so it fits along with this bar. I think you've handled your name well, so that's cool. That's kind of a cool identity right here that you have created. But yeah, some smaller text, and then just kind of listing up these kind of things right here. Let's see. Are there some other kind of things that's missing? A Behance site, LinkedIn URL, and then again your alignment. If you're doing bullets, they should always be aligned, bullet lists. So it looks like, you know, this one here should be aligned, this other bullet list should be aligned, and I would align these headings as well. I would probably just do a left alignment on this end side of your document, and I think that would just work better. And then I was just thinking that you could probably just use this area right here with your contact information and then use this other side right here for your cover letter. Just taking out this when you're creating the cover letter. And again, just like a little bit smaller font for all of the other information. This font looks like it's pretty good. That's probably what I would do. And I would move this up so it's a little closer to the headline of the different colleges that you were in. Okay, so here we have another one that has the 3-column grid, which is a very good and effective grid. But we have some consistency issues and some alignment issues and things like that in here. And I'd be careful, you know, again, with some of these fonts like this that are overused and don't look very professional. Again, you know, alignment, this one here, these aren't, you know, if you're going to use these little acronyms, make sure you do them correctly, you know. AN for animate, capital IA, capital ID. So, you know, there's some issues with these. There's some issues with the spelling right there. It's not a, you know, not capitalized. Some alignment issues right here. You want, you know, this one here again has a little indent, and so does this one. And these have bullets and these don't. You know, you want to have those consistent things there too. Again, here's a little space, here's a little space, right? And these aren't bullets. These aren't separate different degrees, so I wouldn't use the bullets here, actually. You want to put Associates of Science, Graphic Design, and then you don't even have to put graduated. You can just put August 2019. And then this experience right here, it looks like it's been pasted in here from somewhere else. There's some things missing, running off stuff right here. And some spelling errors right there. So this should be put in there in the same format as all of the other text and things that you have here, and use, you know, the same subheadings that you have on all of these other categories, and keep them the same. You know, the subheadings should all be the same. It should be consistent. Here you have technical skills really big, but you have these other ones smaller. So you want to, you know, keep that in mind. And here, you know, these lines are so spaced out that you kind of don't get a connection that it is a paragraph. So those should be closer together. And then your information right here, you don't want to have any hyphens in your address or your website or anything like that. So you could probably make this box a little bit bigger so things fill in there, and maybe highlight your name a little bit more. I would probably have that a lot larger. You have TIFF designs here. It honestly doesn't look super professional. So I think that a better way to show off your skills would be to put Tiffany Ritzer design in a big, bold headline up here on top. I'm going to show you some examples where they have used that in kind of a cool but still professional font. So nothing like this that looks like childlike, or like it, you know, is too handwritten, but still something that kind of is unique. Okay, so we have this resume right here, which again, you know, there's some good parts of it right here. I think the combination fonts are working well. They're kind of classic and clean. You have a few little icons right here when it comes to phone, email, and website. But again, you want to try to avoid having these on 2 lines. So either smaller font or more space would be good here. You're lacking margins. This text is way out of the margins. That's a big layout no-no. So that would be kind of a red flag for any employer if they see you having text that close to the margins. So make sure you have that margin space. And you know, you have like a little conversational thing right here, which is fine if you want it as an introduction, but then maybe just take out this about me, or otherwise about me, then maybe condense your introduction here a little bit. This is almost like a cover letter. So maybe some of this information you can put in the cover letter instead and tailor it to the job that you're choosing to pretend to apply for. Some of the other things in here too, like, you know, you have this line here, but then the columns are actually here. So you want that, you know, again, aligned together. And I think it's a little bit busy with, you know, a stroke on this box, another box inside, and then the text. Simplifying this will make it look a lot more professional. You know, either have just the black and white or this kind of turquoise color and lose that stroke on boxes. Whenever you have a box with a default stroke on it, it just looks like you didn't take the time to clean things up in InDesign because that stroke is default. So make sure that you kind of keep things as simple and as clean as possible. And it kind of looks clean and simple up here, and then it starts getting kind of tiny and difficult to read here in the other parts of it. This one right here, I mean, this is simple. You probably have all the information that you need in here. Some of these things, again, are feel a little bit mixed up. I would put the Adobe skills in a separate list, and then some of your design skills as another separate list. And again, you know, you're putting logo designer, time management, logo and business card designs, and excellent design sense. Those are not all kind of falling in the same category. Some of it seems like it's more soft skills, and other things are design skills. So I would also separate those. And then if you're listing the design skills, just do that simple list of the courses that you've taken. I think that will feel a little bit more consistent. When you have subheadings, you never want those indented more than the rest of your paragraph. So make sure that they are, you know, aligned with everything else here. The one thing about having a, you know, a 3-column or 2-column grid on your layout is that it feels less like a Word template. So some of those things I think could really help for you here as well. And then we have that stroke on the box that you could take off to clean things up as well. And if this is, like we talked about in last week's class, if you did not complete a degree, don't put it in there. That's not like any strengths or anything that you want to do that. If you have completed a degree, you can definitely put that in there. But if it says that you just studied prerequisites for the physical therapy one, and then you quit, that is not something that you really want to potential employers to, you know, judge you on, so to speak, right? So then you want to put, and here you don't have to say that you're studying this. You just put the degree that you are going for, so bachelor's or associate's degree, and the expected graduation date, and Independence University, of course. Okay, a couple more. This one right here, again, you know, kind of clean and simple and easy to take in here, but it looks quite a bit like a Word template. So I would, again, you know, put your name up here big. You don't need to have the title of professional summary, but the other subheadings should be emphasized somehow. Bolder, bigger, all caps, something so that it's easier to find these different subcategories. And move your bullets closer. I showed you how to do that in the demo. And let's see here. Okay, some things down here. If you have a line that goes down and wraps down to the next line, you want that next line to be indented past that bullet. Otherwise, this feels very awkward. And then again, you know, if this is your design, fine. I would probably push it a little bit more, take off any strokes, but you could also just kind of get a different approach to it that doesn't look quite as template based. And in this one right here, we have kind of the same thing. There's a 2-column grid right here. I would probably use a little bit more bullets and simplifying some of this information right here. Right now, it just seems really text heavy and hard to kind of go through. And when you're putting things in center alignment, then it's kind of hard for the eye to divide those into different sections, like these different employment specifics and things like that. Same things with education. The contact you might be able to keep like that, but I would, list some of the education and the skills and bullet points instead. And then, if this is your personal identity, try to connect that to any kind of name headline or anything that you have by using the same fonts or, making it a header that kind of goes together. Right now, it feels like this is one design style and this is another design style. So try to kind of make it flow consistently. Let me show you guys a few more examples. We did talk about some examples during the class last week, but I have a few more that I'm going to point out some of the things that are kind of lacking in these designs that you could easily just change a little bit, move a little bit, and you could get a really effective design. It doesn't mean that all of them have to look the same by any means, but if there's any other ones that I'm showing you that are appealing to you, you could probably take your information with any of the changes that I've mentioned and kind of put them into these formats. So hold on here. I'm going to open up my example page. All right, here's one that's using the 2-column type approach. It has a lot of white space. It's very clean and easy to look at. It has all caps section headers, some cute little graphics. You could have that if you wanted to or not. It does have these little levels right here, or scale bars that maybe yes, maybe no, I'm not sure if I recommend those at all. But just layout wise, I think with this split between left alignment, right alignment, and left alignment makes for kind of a nice aesthetic. This one right here also has more of a 3-column grid with one skinnier column and one wider column. Usually that's more helpful as you're putting together the information. But again, it has that juxtaposition between the right alignment and the left alignment that kind of creates a line or a segment separating those 2 columns. And then it has things that are a little bit fun and fanciful with some of this kind of scripty fonts. But here's an example of a font that is unique, not too childlike, and still looks kind of fun and professional and heavy enough to feel graphic. As you notice, all of the subheadings are all caps. Many people do that because it kind of gives that subheading a nice little rectangular shape and easy to pick out. This one was one that was shown in the as one of the benchmarks. And again, we went through this and kind of how good this, I had good margins, good space around it. This top area right here, like I talked about, you could kind of cut it off right here and still use this heading and then just take this information out and then put a cover letter or something in there, right? Has a little quote, personal quote that makes it feel personal. So this, I think, is a very good example to kind of go by. You could put in your own information in here. You can make little changes like making the headings all caps. You don't have to have these little lines. You don't have to have these colors, but you can kind of go from this type of layout. This one right here was the other one that was in the benchmarks that we talked about that I think is also a helpful one. I mentioned that, probably not these different colors and logos for the different technical skills. I wouldn't put those in there, but some of the other things are looking fine as well. I probably wouldn't indent these bullets, maybe just keep them aligned with the top headings. because you don't want to have too many shifts and indents in your alignment. I think if you just did that, these columns right here would feel a lot tidier and cleaner. Here's another one, again, nice white space, kind of simplified. Over here on the side, this one has it kind of listed differently, where on the sidebar you have the subheadings and then the information is listed on the other side. This one right here is a super simple, very effective graphic design resume. So if you're intimidated by trying to create something really, you know, cool or fancy, or if your resume that you have now is either too simple or too disorganized, this is a great sample to go by. And I wouldn't care if all of you kind of used a version of this. This one again also has like this different categories over here. You could list your other information kind of like those other ones that has like a colored column over here if you want to, and then other things here. But just this little line right here in the same thickness and color as the name, a big name on top right here with your kind of titles, email address, and phone number. That's really all you need for your identity right here on top. You don't really need to put a street address in there. You don't you know, need to put any of that other stuff. I would probably definitely have links to Behance and LinkedIn. And he has his portfolio site right here. So, you know, that kind of stuff. And if you don't have all of this experience to list, you can do those other things like technical skills, soft skills, whatever. But I think a nice heading like this it's eye-catching, it's professional, and it still looks clean and classic for a designer. This one here kind of has that same approach with the name really big on top. This one has, you know, a little bit more playful with a lowercase and some colored initials right here. But then again, you know, a column underneath here, education, related experience and interests over here, and then work experience over here. So where you put those different things might be different. I think that for you students, this approach is really good, where you have your introduction, your contact information, and your links over in the one column, and then your skills, you know, your designer and identity across the top. It doesn't even have to be in this column. It could be across the whole top if you want to. And then listing skills, experience, education, and that kind of stuff over on this side. So you can move that out, put your cover letter in there, and then if you're sending this to somebody with a cover letter as page 1 and the PDF, the resume as page 2, then you will have a really nice, consistent feel to the document that they're receiving. All right, so I hope this will help you as you move on with your revisions this week. You have to remember, you know, to keep up with the course. This week, you really need to have started on your revisions of your projects and also this revision of the resume. Because, you know, that's what's due this week. And then it's going to be, you know, some of the things you might be able to catch up on next week if you need to. But definitely, you know, the revisions from of your projects need to be started. If you need a little bit more time to do the revisions on your resume, take that time rather than just not doing a very good job on your revisions. It's going to be well worth it. Our next, this week, we don't have a session on Thursday. I did Monday and Wednesday instead. The rest of the week, please keep working on your project and resume revisions. And if you haven't had your projects reviewed by your FPA yet, then you have to get going on that. That's going to have to be done this week. Next week, I would love to see some before and afters of these resumes. And if I get some really good examples between the before and the after, we're going to look at those in our critiques. and share those with the rest, because I think those are some of the more encouraging things where you can really see how sometimes some really simple changes make a huge difference. And that really speaks to your abilities as a designer to make revisions and take feedback and that kind of stuff. So next week, we're going to have critiques on Monday and Thursday. Monday we'll have our regular time, 4 p.m. and Thursday might be a little bit different because by then I will be in Europe. And if needed, I will do some additional recordings with feedback as well, so that you can be well on your way to having your projects finished and your portfolio updated for the final week. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns, but carry on. Use all of these resources that are listed here in the announcements for your revisions, especially if you're going down here. There's revision resources right here. They're all for your projects. And this one right here, resources for resumes and logos. There is all kinds of cool examples of good resumes. I'll put some of those links up there. There is logo design advice, quick and easy Adobe tutorial, how to make a monogram if you want to have that in there, and then all of these other Linda tutorials. But just having your name at the top, like we saw up here in some of these examples, is a great way to just have a strong graphic design identity, and just keep a nice and clean and easy to read font. That kind of reflects your personality still. All right. On Friday, I might have some open time that I'll be in Zoom during the day, and maybe also in the evening. And I will be sending out messages on that. So if you want any kind of one-on-one help with any of these revisions, then you can pop into the Zoom room and I can help you then. All right, have a good one. Thanks, bye-bye.